I am Jeff St Laurent. This is the live Tuesday call. We've got a great group of people on. We were chatting beforehand, so if you're listening to this recording, if you can ever make the Tuesday call, it's great because it's a great opportunity to connect with people, get to hear your voice, where you're from, and then before we get started, I always go over the topic and kind of get a feel for kind of what questions you might have around that. So it's nice hearing from people in that respect. Before we get started on the topic, which today is the value of an email list and how to utilize it in your business. Just a few points that the Tuesday calls obviously are all recorded, and I put those in my university on my website. So my website, sellingcoaching.com, and then if you go to the university, that's my hub of my education. So if you go to the university and under the Tuesday calls, you'll be able to see the calls there, and I also have a lot of other shorter videos as well, all focusing on what I help coaches with, and that's transitioning to a full-time business. So that's where my expertise lies there, and I connect everything back to the selling aspect because that's really what I look at. You know, since 2004, I've been doing this full time, and I always connect it back to, I started to understand the art of selling and the skill set of selling, and I attribute that to my ongoing success in my business, and those are the aspects I want to be able to teach to you. I have a private Facebook group at the top of my website. You can see a little banner there that follows you around. This is join my private Facebook group. Great community of coaches. We're closing in on 1,100 now, so that's exciting, and we're growing every day. And so just a lot of great participation in there. My goal is to stretch people as much as I can in that group. Is in terms of how we can get ourselves out there. A lot of people doing videos. I've got an ongoing visibility challenge, which we create 30 videos over 91 days. So if you're not in there, please check it out. At least consider it. Of course, if it's worth it for you, request to join, and I'll get you into the group. And then lastly, before we get rolling, if you are in a position where you might be frustrated, or maybe you want it so bad and you don't know how to start, you need some guidance, you want to maximize your effectiveness and efficiency in moving forward, consider mentor coaching with me. Consider I have one-on-one, and I also have a group mentoring program. And if you want to talk more about that, just go to my website, Selling Coaching, under the Work With Me page, scroll to the bottom. I've got a form there, fill that out, and then that will just come to me, and we can just create a relaxed conversation from there and just see where we can go. No pressure of having to work with me or hire me. It's just, sometimes it's good to just talk it out and get a feel for what you're looking for. So with that being said, let's talk about the topic today, the value of creating an email list and then how to utilize it. One of the first things, I'll share about your email list, and I say email list because everyone knows, oh yes, we got to create an email list. I like to refer to it outside of business talk. When I'm talking to my audience, I like to refer to it as my email community, because really at the end of the day, it's a community you're looking to create. It's an audience, but the community gives it that feel of what you're looking to create with them. You want to create a relationship with them. These are, I like to call them your fans. It's your audience. It's the people that you can support, and then also they support you in a lot of ways as well. And it can become like that family almost in a lot of ways. And so I want to give you that as we get started on this in terms of the value of an email list, so you can understand what you can create with it. And I'll preface it all by saying, if you're not on my email list, I'd highly recommend that you get on, not because, I want you on my email list, but I want you on my email community because I want you to become a part of that community. It's a different community than my Facebook group or something like that. It's just different. It's the things we can communicate there. But also, I want you to be able to see what I do. I want you to be able to see my emails and see my subject lines and read what I'm writing and what I'm able to create there with people, and how we can create the community feel and how you can do it. Of course, you got to be able to find your own style. So if you want to get on it, if you're not, if you go to my website, sellingcoaching.com, right on that front page there, you'll see an offer for the Ultimate Startup Guide for New Coaches. I actually kind of preface it through, offering my dog if you enter your name and email address, and then I joke around. But that will not only get you the Ultimate Startup Guide, but it will also get you on my email community so you can start to see this in action, what I'm going to talk about today. Because I'm a big advocate of role modeling what I teach, and that's an important aspect of entrepreneurship. So when we think about the value of this community that we're creating on email, I rewind back to the objective of our business. And the objective of our business is to create an audience. That's it. Like literally, that's all it is to create an audience. I was in bed, thinking the other day of just like, an audience. And you think about like, uh, those of you that are on my email community know I'm a big fan of Bon Jovi. And, a month ago, whatever it was, I went to, one of his concerts and so forth and so on. And, you have this band that's been playing for 34 years. And they're obviously well known, and they're able to, play concerts around the world, sold out concerts to, tens of thousands of people, depending on the venue. And it's like they have an audience, right? They created an audience. And so what's the difference between Bon Jovi, who's been playing for 34 years, who can sell out, huge stadiums around the world, night in after night out, and someone else who's just in their basement, playing the guitar, singing a song, or has a little band together? Like, what's the difference? And other than years, let's just say this other person's been doing it for 34 years just as well. But what's the difference is Bon Jovi has an audience, right? They have got a following. And over the course of time, they built that following. And it started with one person at a time, and one person heard a song and said, wow, this is good. And another person, and then they shared it with that person. And then, you know what I mean? And how does it end up 34 years later to where they are? Couldn't even tell you, right? But it's one song at a time. It's another song at a time. It's another share. It's another work. It's getting the message out there. It's playing, in the basement of, some dive bar with, a handful of people there. It's like everyone gets their start somewhere, and obviously, and where they go down the road is different for everybody. But I want you to think about like that right now, is just metaphorically speaking, is you're starting off and you're the starving artist, so to speak, and no one knows about you and no one cares about you, and you're writing and you have some things to say, but you don't have an audience, right? But you want one, so where do you begin? You start by creating a video. You start by writing an article. You start by doing a podcast. You start by doing a live Tuesday call and no one shows up. You know what I mean? And then you do another one and you record it and you do another one. And we can get into the specifics of the marketing aspect of it, but really for now is like, where do you begin? Like, that's where you begin. But the bigger objective to it is that, you're creating that fan base, you're creating that audience. And I want you to be able to give to that audience. And when you give to those people and you start to help them through what you're doing, that's when people become your fans and they follow you because what you're doing is relevant for them. And so talking about that is, of course, I won't go into this part, but of course, you hear me say this all the time, is it's very important that we know who our audience is as best as possible. Of course, the classic phrase, if you're a student of mine, I say helping who with what specifically. So as we start to find that phrase, we identified the who and what we help them with. And therefore, as we start to market ourselves and get ourselves out there, we know where those people are. We know how we can be relevant and specific to them, just as I am for you. I'm helping coaches transition to a full-time business, so I can talk about the elements that are vital and relevant for you, so you're more apt to want to listen to an hour call or something like that, because it's detailed and it's specific for you, and that leads itself to value. And I always say, when we tie it back to coaching or selling aspect, is that when you have value for somebody, that's when they buy. If there's no value, then they're less likely to buy. So we start to create this email list and we start to build this community. And the reason why an email list is so important is because this is the hub of our business. Like, I want you to think about your email list as your business. When I say as your business, because that's your client base. Like, that's where your clients are. That's where your potential or future clients are, right? Those are the people that you support and that support you. You can have audiences elsewhere, like you hear me talk about my private Facebook group. We're just capping 1,100 right now, or getting close to that. It's a fantastic audience, right? But wherever you have it on whatever social platform you're on, just recognize, though, that you don't own that. Facebook could change at any time. And if all of a sudden groups changed or whatever, they just went away for whatever reason, that's gone. And if I'm fully and only relying on that one thing to be able to communicate with my audience, then it's like I lose my business. I lose those people. But an email list, you own that. Everyone has email, and and that's a fantastic way of communicating. So that's why, we really want the email list as our hub. Yes, have a social media platform as well. It's a fantastic form of engagement. I love my private Facebook group and what I'm able to do with that with my people. But at the end of the day, I want everybody, the best I can is I want to get them on email. There's definitely a lot of crossover, and there's some that aren't in my email that are in my Facebook group. But the objective is to get them over there as best I can, because that's the place where, when I say I can own them, it's just like you want to have a place where when you have someone in this community of yours, and even if that's coupled with a social media platform, the whole objective now is now you can stay in front of those people. If you have no way of capturing people and putting them somewhere where you can at will be in front of them to say anything, to voice anything, whether you're selling something or just contributing something or making them aware of something or whatever you're doing with them, you've got to have access to communicate with that person. Think about the people in your life. If you don't have access to communicate with them whenever at will, it's like, how's that going to work, right? It's not going to work very well or very long. And that's why we want to get those people on there, all right? And so that's our vehicle of communication. And so that's in the sense of I want to start off with that mindset of, okay, yes, this is our business. Your email community, email list is your business. It's where your clients and potential clients are. It's your vehicle of communication. And that's the foundational philosophy of it. Now let's start to talk about, I won't go into too much in terms of building it, like how do we strategically build a list. The call I did last week is basically how to generate leads, how to market yourself that kind of draw leads, and that ultimately all goes back to lead capture and getting them on your email list. So that's why I went into detail in terms of marketing yourself, so you can check that out in the university. But what we want to talk about here is not so much the marketing aspect of it, but in order to build it, we've got to market ourselves. So without me going to detail of how we do it, you can reference that call. Just know that, like I said earlier, how do you start? You create a video, you write a blog post, you put on YouTube, you make a post on Facebook, you go do a speaking engagement. You set up a live one, go to meetup.com and set up a speaking engagement, or call someone that and say, hey, I own a seminar and coaching company and I want to get out there and spread my word. Who do you know? Would you be willing to have me come in and talk to your clients and your employees, right? It's starting to get your message out there. That's all it is about. You hear me say that all the time, is speaking your message. That's always our primary activity in our coaching business is if we're not in front of people, we're not going to ever get clients. It's impossible because we're not getting our message out there. So behind the scenes work doesn't do anything. It's when we start to engage with people and start to create those connections. And so that in turn leads people to start to understand you more and what you teach. And if it's value for them, as long as you have the lead capture set up in place on your website or the places where you're driving them to, with your free offer, et cetera, that's when they can start getting on your email list. And that's always a great thing. Like I worked with one of my mentoring clients last night, and we're working on not only helping who with what, but as we've come up with it, we're starting now to come up with his free offer and the kind of the hook of it all. And he's had one for a while on his website, but he's been driving traffic to it, paid traffic and just organic traffic, but he's not getting anyone signing up for it. So that tells me it's like, well, at least you have it in place. But whatever you've got in terms of a title or your headline, helping who with what specifically, isn't working, right? It's no one's converting. I get people on a daily basis subscribing to my free offer, the Ultimate Startup Guide for New Coaches, on my website, and so that's a testament to something's working because number one, people are going there, and number two, some people are signing up. Could it be more effective? Absolutely. Can you look at the analytics and the numbers? Absolutely. I'm not that person. I just know hey, if it's working, I'm going to see the results. And if I really want to dive into it, I could look into the numbers more. But it's you know what? I want to focus on bigger things. But I'm saying for you is that's a very easy way of testing it. Another thing that I even do with my clients is, hey, once you have your headline, go to meetup.com, for instance, and put some shorter version of your headline, as the title, and then host a meetup, a couple days later, and see what happens. If no one's joining the group, or if people join the group, and then if they end up coming to the meeting, who are these people? Are these your ideal client? Are these the people that you're looking to be working with? It's a great way to really test in the real world if something's working or not, and then who am I actually getting with those people? So that's where you can start. Ultimately, you want to keep in mind, though, as you start interacting with these people, as they start doing something with you, if number one, hopefully they're subscribing on their own, but if they're not, if you interact with people, invite them to your email community. Invite them over to it and say, hey, listen, I'd love to put you into my email community. I'd love to have you be a part of what we're doing. I'm just wondering if you'd be open to that, and see what they say, and you share if you have a free offer. Hopefully it's relevant for them. You say, I actually get this free offer. You can either just send them the link, or you can say, hey, would you mind if I just put you on? And if they say, yeah, that'd be great, put them on your email list. That's where you can get started. Where I tell all my clients is, start off with friends and family, especially if you're not starting off with anybody. First of all, obviously, you're going to need an email platform to put them on. You're not going to be using a free service like a Google or Outlook or something like that. You need a service like Aweber, for instance, or MailChimp. I recommend Aweber, but they're both fantastic in a lot of ways. So if you check those out, that's where you can start off with your email list. Like that's the actual physical, not software, but program that you need in order to actually create the email list and place for them to go. But then from there, that's where I'd start off with. I'd start off with your friends and family, and I get those people on there, as many people as as many contacts as and here's the point is, even if they're not relevant contacts in terms of your headline. So for instance, I have a lot of people on my email list from even when I did stuff in the fitness industry many years ago, and different aspects of State Farm insurance. When I worked with State Farm for a while, we went with my coaching company, and I did a lot of stuff with realtors through my coaching company. And it's I help coaches transition to a full-time business now, So, but the thing about it is, and this is what I say about your community, is that when people are your fans, they're your fans. When people like you, they like you, and people stick around. And when it's relevant to them, they consume your information more regularly. If it's not necessarily relevant to them, it doesn't mean they'll be reading everything and consuming it all, but they like being a part of what you're doing because they like who you are and they like who you represent. And that's what you're doing, is you're building a tribe. There were people at the Bon Jovi concerts who, they didn't like every song. I'm a freak and I love every song, right? But even one of my, best friends that went with me, he's like, this song sucks. And I'm just yeah, and I'm just singing it to him just to, make fun of it. But even though you're a fan of somebody, doesn't mean they're going to like all the work that you do, and that's okay, or it's not relevant for them. But the point is that they stick around because they want that. And the great part about that is you never know when something can become relevant for that person. And the key is when they're a fan of yours, if something becomes relevant, and it could become relevant because something changes in their life, something happens in their life, and literally in an instant, all of a sudden they look at everything differently. And now they see a title, or they see something that you put out and they connect with, or they're reminded of you. And all of a sudden, next thing you know, you have a call and you have a client. Perfect example is I came home from my workout on Monday morning, and I got in my phone after my workout, and I saw a message from somebody who I hadn't spoken with, and I didn't know at the time it was 10 years. It was a former client of mine. But they've been on my email list, that whole time. They've been receiving my stuff. And it's like, hey, I want to step my business up to the next level. And they're like, I don't know if you are still doing this in the capacity that you did it before. I see you're working with coaches now. And this person is not a coach and nothing to do with coaching, but they're looking for a business coach, and they loved the work that we did 10 years ago, and they wanted to work with me. Called the person up immediately as soon as I got home. And next thing you know, they're got the credit card out, hiring me. We got our first session on Wednesday. And that's a testament to my email list, because they've been on my community, they've followed me, they've been a fan of me, and whether they've consumed my information or not, I was in front of them, because obviously as I asked them, well, how did you think of me? What brought this up? And they're like, well, the work we've done was fantastic in the past, so you've always been on my mind, but the fact that I've see your emails all the time, when the timing came right, just one of your emails came in and you're like, oh my God, Jeff, he's the person for me. And they reached out, and next thing you know, they're my client. And that's just a quick story. I mean, literally, I've got dozens of stories just like that, and of people from the past, whether they've been clients or not clients, people that have taken my group fitness class when I taught group fitness and, in the fitness industry, who just through some interaction, like when I wrote my book, I did a free giveaway in my classes, and I've got everyone on my email list. I mean, I was giving away books to get people on my email list, and a lot of those people are just still on that email list. And I had a teacher last year, for instance, who hired me, and she's just bored with her career and hates her career, wants to change. And I'm not a career coach or anything like that, but she worked with me and she gets my emails and she's a fan of mine. And yes, I help coaches transition to a full-time business, but it didn't matter. I'm relevant to her. You know what I mean? And I'm the person that she wanted to work with. And that's the value that you can create over time with the community. And all this starts from your friends and family. It all starts from your existing contacts. Whether it's relevant or not relevant, like I said to your headline, is that if they're fans of yours, they'll follow you and they'll stay with you. And I wanted to share a couple of those stories because a lot of times we don't realize the long-term value of this. A lot of it's like, oh, I want to make money now and I got to make money now. And when's my first or my next client going to be? And a lot of the times it takes time. And that's where I relate it all back to selling and go, yeah, you hear me talk about need and timing. Right? That's the foundation of selling, and understanding selling is that someone has a need that they really want to do something about. And the next part is the timing of it all, meaning why now? If it's not why now, they're not ready to do anything. They're not ready to buy. They're not ready to hire you. But when it becomes right now, that's when something becomes relevant for them. That's when they take action. So as per my story, with the woman who, 10 years ago worked with me, and then all of a sudden something happened in her life, she wanted to make a change, and then all of a sudden I show up on email, boom, next thing you know, there's action because there's a relationship and something goes on, and because the timing's right. And that's the thing is, same thing with this other woman that I taught group fitness to. God knows how long ago that was, you know what I mean? But at the end of the day, timing's right. I show up on email and boom, I get an email back saying, hey, let's talk. I'm wondering how you can help me. And that's the point of it is basically how you're able to do that over time and nurture those relationships. There are people I talk to on a daily basis that will potentially work with me or not. And I'm one of the biggest things I'm assessing with them is that time. And they're all on my email list. So it's another way of communicating with them, but it's through that communication that breeds, especially when they respond from emails, that's when it's a great place to start creating conversations with them. Or the fact that you have their email as you get to know them, like even as they start to come onto your list through your free offer, just like I do with people who join my private Facebook group. I just reach out and I say, what's your motivation for joining? Why are you here? What's going on with your business? And I create those dialogues. And in terms of how we start to monetize that, and hopefully you're kind of already seeing how we can start to monetize it, but how you proactively monetize it is essentially it's the ability to create those conversations, right? So you create the conversations through when people are initially joining, and that's really the start point of monetizing, is when they're joining the group, or in this case, obviously joining your email list. That first phase of that automatic email that goes out called, let's say, an autoresponder, saying, hey, here's your free offer, here's your free guide, or whatever it is you're doing, and then what was your motivation for wanting this? Tell me a little bit more about where you're at in your blank, whatever area you're helping people with on. It's creating that engagement. And so not everyone's going to respond, obviously, but the people who do, those are the people that you put your effort into. All right? Anyone who's going to respond to me, I'm going to put time into, and I'm going to create a conversation with. Those people that don't respond, don't respond. And that's where we begin that qualification process of just understanding where this person is, why are they, attracted to what we're doing, why is it relevant for them? In other words, what's their need? And then how badly do they want to do something about it, and why now? And if that checks out, would they consider working with someone like myself? I mean, I want to make it sound real quick, but that's really what it is. It doesn't have to be any more difficult than that. And that's when you can make that approach and ask, based on what I'm hearing you say, I can't help but ask if you'd consider working with me because you're clearly looking to do X, Y, and Z, and it sounds like, correct me if I'm wrong, the timing couldn't be better. What are your thoughts? You know what I mean? And like, that's the approach. And I make it sound simple, but that's really how it is when you get to that spot. But that's where it comes into that engagement of that community and being consistent with that aspect of it. That's where we start to monetize that piece. Other ways you start to monetize your list, if we're talking about that specifically, is as you have products, or even if just right now you're like, oh, I don't have any products, but I just have my coaching. That is your first product, is like, let's say, one-on-one coaching. So you can weave that into, the content of your email, in terms of maybe it's just a PS at the end. Hey, I'm available for one-on-one mentoring. Just like at the beginning of the call, right? I say that in my little startup where I talk about, recordings and things like that. And I say, hey, if you're in the spot, we need some guidance, etc., consider hiring me as your mentor coach. So it's not a hard sell. It's just saying, hey, it's making people aware of what you're doing. If people aren't aware of what you're doing and that they can work with you in a certain capacity or product that you have, then they're never going to buy it because they're not aware of it. Even though it might seem obvious, don't just assume it's obvious to everybody. It's like, hey, I'm available for one-on-one mentoring. I'm available for one-on-one coaching. This is a consideration of yours. So you can say that in a PS and an email. You can start to weave in through your content of what you write, or just talking about some of the things that you do with your clients, or when I work with my one-on-one clients. That's part of the reason why I want you to get on my email list. If you're not, is I want you to read my emails, not because, I want you to read my emails, because I want you to see how I weave that stuff in there. I start planting the seed of working with me as your mentor coach. I do it in these calls all the time. I talk about the things that I do and the things that I help people out with, because I want a listener to be able to start to understand how they could work with me, or I don't want them to start to see the value of working with me. But I'm not saying, oh, hire me as my, I'm not selling it hard. I'm weaving those into my stories, and that's a conscious thing that I want you to start listening to and learning. That's what I learned from my mentor. Is I learned how to. He taught me from selling from the stage, so to speak, when you're speaking live events. It really is an art, and when you see it live in action, or when you see it written out from people, it's like, oh wow, it works really well. So you start to weave into those spaces, when I'm working with my clients, or these are some of the things I'm helping my mentoring clients with, and then you give some specifics. People start to get an idea of what you do, how you do it, and where the value might be for them, if some of those things that they're looking to do are the things that you're talking about right there. So that's just simple ways. You have to realize, though, it's not just like, oh, people are just clicking and just saying, oh, great, I want to hire you all the time, right? But part of it is it's the awareness of it. Like, that's my message to you, is it's awareness of it. If I don't say it at the beginning of my call every time, then it's just that one call that person listens to where I don't say it, that I missed that opportunity. But because I said it, all of a sudden they're like, oh, wow, I could hire Jeff, or I could work with Jeff. If there's enough value there, then it's like fantastic. I had someone on the Tuesday call last week for the first time. And at the end of the call, we're doing a question and answer, and he was just saying a few things afterwards. And I can clearly tell it was obvious that he was really, got a lot of value from the call, and you could tell he needed some direction in his business. And we created a conversation since then, and I got a complimentary call with him, this Wednesday night. So will he become my client? I don't know, but there's a fair chance that this person will. But the whole point is that we start to engage from that process, and we start to create those conversations, and that's where we start to monetize. But recognize that you've got to have the patience with it. You have the patience and the consistency with it, and that's where I'll start to close this aspect of the value of the email list and how to utilize it. Is when we start to email our people, a lot of people are feeling like, oh God, I hear this all the time with my clients, is I just don't want to I don't want to bother people. I don't want to be in front of them like all the time. It's like, oh, I just want to email like maybe once a month or once every other week or something like that. Or once a week even seems like it's too much. And what I'll say for you is that, from a philosophy perspective, reality is on an ideal world, you're emailing your people every day. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that I've learned from that are emailing their people every day. A lot of businesses that you are subscribed to, like a Sears or something like that, or whatever it is, Bed Bath & Beyond, like they send emails every day, right? So I know different businesses, but the point being is that you got to be in front of your audience because you don't know when the timing is right. That's the point. And once a month, once every other week, even once a week is too little. And so you think, oh my God, but I don't want to just send them stuff to send them stuff. And that's the thing is you're not sending them stuff to send them things. You're not just trying to sell stuff on your email. What you do is you're trying to build relationships. You're trying to cultivate that community. And how do you create that community? This is part of the reason why I want you to get on my email list, because you can start to see how I do this in action. Is you start to share just what's going on. You make it's a live email. It's not a canned autoresponder like a lot of the larger, when I say larger coaches, larger gurus out there that are operating on a much bigger level, meaning their audience is much larger, their revenues are much larger. When someone subscribes to their email list, it's basically just a funnel. I mean, it's an automated autoresponder that to just get automatic emails on some type of a frequency that's been pre-done, and it's all designed to put you through basically a sales process to sell you different products. The type of emails that I'm talking about here aren't those. It's their emails that you send out to communicate like you would. I think about it as like they're my friends and my family, and I'm writing to them. And I'm just communicating to them on the spot. You know, if I'm leaving my office in a few minutes to get my son and we're going to go do something, I'll talk about that. You know, if something's going on where, you know, I'm going to my Bon Jovi concert. Last night on my email list just came from a very vulnerable spot. You know, this past weekend, having split with a woman that I've cared for a very long time, and it being really hard on me, and I'm sharing this now because it's really cool what you can create with everybody, because the responses that you get from people, it's amazing. Like, people are there, people are reading. A lot of people think that, oh, I put something out there and no one's responding and no one's consuming this information. But you're wrong. Like, they're just not saying anything or doing about it, but they're consuming it. And then when you do something that really stands out, in the sense, you don't know what stands out when you're doing it, but you just come from that just communication space where you're just authentic and you come out there, like I mentioned in that email I sent yesterday, you get a lot of people who reach out to you, and I was just shocked at the amount of people that number one even read the emails, but also that come back to you support. And that's where I talk to you about the community that you build is not only just where you support people and you give to people, but when you do that and you do that consistently enough, they support you in whatever way. And supporting you means, like, I got a lot of great emotional support from people, and some of the things they said were fantastic. And some from people that I not that I wouldn't expect it from necessarily, but I was just like, wow, people came out of the woodwork, are like, oh my God, I've been trying to contact you for a long time now. And you know what I mean? Like, it's really cool, but also supporting you in the sense of, hiring you and working with you and doing your courses, or, supporting you by showing up at your events or calling into your calls like this that you're doing. That's different forms of support, and because they're fans, and that's the community that you start to build. So it's coming just from that authentic space. And a lot of what I want you to see that I do from my email community, is by getting on it and start to read it, is it's just, don't think like, oh, it has to be like anything special. You can write about the weirdest things. A couple weeks ago, I wrote about the dead chicken in my car, and how my friend at midnight said, my chicken died and you need to dispose of it for me on your way home. And I'm like, and there's a whole story around it, but it's like things that happen in life like that, whether they're real and raw or just ridiculously stupid. People connect to that stuff. And if you're like, oh, I'm not a good writer, or oh, I don't know how to do that stuff, it's like, doesn't matter. I didn't know how to do that stuff either. I just started writing, and I just started finding it, and you just start finding your craft of, well, how am I going to start to deliver this? And all I do is I just start with something, and I tie that into something that's relevant for my audience. I talked about yesterday a topic, like I said, about losing someone that I loved very deeply, and really being raw and real about it all. And then it's like, well, how do you connect that to entrepreneurship? And bottom line, it was like, well, you know what? I'm sending you this email. I went to my workout this morning. I had some great, mentoring calls today. I actually got a new client yesterday, that woman that I shared earlier, that story. 1 second I'm just bawling my eyes out in a mess, and the next second I'm, calling her up going like, what the hell am I doing? And it's just like, take a deep breath, and next thing you know, it's like I'm running a credit card for $2,000 and I've got a new client, and it's exciting. So it's like I'm sharing those aspects of this is the behind the scenes stuff, is you're going down that space of sharing that, and I tie it into doing the work even when things are hard and life hits you in the face. And as an entrepreneurship doesn't wait for you, so that's kind of the tie-in of something like that. So when you write an email, it's just you're starting to come from a space of just, what am I doing right now? and just seeing where it goes. And it's those everyday, just silly things. Like one night I was eating, 7 scrambled eggs, and it's like that's all I had in my fridge because I was actually going to Florida the next day, and I was running my fridge down. You know what I mean? And it's just like, and I wrote this email, and it's like those emails that get such a fantastic response from people. It's just like, even clients, when I talk to them the next day, they're like, I'm just sitting there reading your email, and I'm reading it to my husband or my wife, and it's just like why am I even reading this right now? But then it's like, well, how are you going to tie this into something? But when you know your audience, you can tie it into something. You can tie it into something that's relevant for them because you know what they're going through. And what that does is that creates this real space. And if right now you're not quite sure, like, oh, I just don't know how to do that, that's why I say, allow me to help teach you over time, by seeing what I'm doing and getting on these calls, and whether you're working with me or not, you start to see that process unfold. And just know that when you're doing that space, when you're doing that and you're doing it consistently every week, multiple times a week, and there's a structure to that. I work with my mentoring clients on setting up a structure and how do we send our emails out on a frequent basis. Do you see what I just did there? I was marketing my coaching indirectly. I'm being transparent right now because I want you to see it in action, right? But the point is like I work with them on creating that structure of when to send them out and why we're sending it out and how it all works, right? But I need you to have that consistency with that and not think about whether it's a good or bad email or how it all works, but rather just start to write and see what comes out and just send it out there. And you know what? Some emails are going to be great. Some emails are going to suck, and who cares? You're just starting to communicate with your audience. And it's one email at a time, and it's the consistency of those emails over time. And it starts with one person. It starts with your friends and your family. I remember when I started my sending emails out, a while ago, 12 plus years ago, and I wasn't doing it. I wasn't building an email list, even though I needed to do it. I was in the same position a lot of maybe you are in right now too. And but I resisted doing it, and I just didn't know how to do it or what to do. And then I just started doing it, and I remember sending out that the first few emails, and it's just friends and family and personal training clients and just people from my past, But it was like people were like liking it. I'm like, what are they liking? What is there to like about this? I was sending this stuff out, and I'm like, ugh, I don't even know if this is good, but like I was getting a response and people were liking it, And when you have a platform like an Aweber, for instance, on the back end, you can see who's opening it. You can see who's clicking through. That's a value of having a space like that, not only for deliverability and formatting and things like that, but you can see who's opening that. And I was shocked. I'm like, wow, these people are clicking through. They're opening, and they're, what I mean? Whether they're reading everything or not, it's like they're taking an action. You know what I mean? And so you can start to see that space, and you can see who your active people are. That also, we can teach you how to do market behind the scenes by seeing who's opening and how you can reach out to those people as well. But that's where you start it all off. You start it all off with, that 5 or 10 people, or 150 people that are just friends and family, and you build one person at a time from there. And you ask for help when you need it, right? Last night I asked for help, not really, but in an emotional support way. You ask for help when you're needing some advice or some thoughts, or you want to run something by your audience, and then you give, and it just becomes this great space for people to interact.